Hello, class 9 students. Our today's topic is the abolition of slavery. During the Jacobin government, slavery was abolished in the French colonies. Abolish means to stop or to put an end. The colonies in the Caribbean island, the colonies like Martinique, Guadeloupe, and San Domingo, they were important suppliers of commodities such as tobacco, indigo, sugar, and coffee. Since Caribbean island was far away from Europe, so Europeans they hesitated. They did not want it to go to distant or far away lands. That led to the shortage of labor on the plantation. So this was met by a triangular slave trade between Europe, Africa, and the Americas. The slave trade began in the 17th century. French merchants they sailed from the ports of Bordeaux or Nantes to the African coast where they bought slaves from local chieftains. Then they were branded and shackled. Shackled means chained. The slaves were packed tightly into ships for the 3-month long voyage across the Atlantic to the Caribbean. There they were sold to plantation owners. That means the French merchants they bought slaves from Africa and then they were taken to Caribbean island where they were sold to the plantation owners. Throughout the 18th century, there was little talk about slavery in France. Though the National Assembly held long debates about slavery, but they did not pass any laws because they feared the opposition from businessmen. They did not want it to anger the businessman whose incomes depended on the slave trade. It was finally the convention which in 1794 legislated to free all slaves from the French colonies. But this also, however, turned out to be short-term measure. Just after 10 years, Napoleon reintroduced slavery. Okay, so after 10 years, Napoleon once again introduced slavery in France. The plantation owners enslaved African Negroes for their own economic interest. Negroes, the meaning of Negro is there in your book also. It's a term used for the people of Africa, indigenous people of Africa. Negro is a derogatory term. Derogatory means disrespectful or insulting. So this term is not in common use any longer. Our last topic is the revolution and everyday life. Soon after the storming of Bastille in 1789 or after the French Revolution, censorship was abolished. That means the people will now have the freedom of speech and expression. During the old regime means before 1789 or before the revolution in France. Okay, so during the old regime, all written materials and cultural activities like books, newspapers, plays could be published only after the approval of the king. But after the revolution, now the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen proclaimed freedom of speech and expression to be a natural rights. Freedom of press also meant that opposing views of events could be now expressed. Ideas of liberty, equality, justice also spread among the French people. Now, conclusion. In 1804, Napoleon Bonaparte crowned himself Emperor of France. So, after the fall of Directory government, Napoleon became the Emperor of France. He then started to conquer neighboring European countries. Napoleon saw his role as a modernizer of Europe. He introduced many laws such as the protection of private property and a uniform system of weights and measures. He was finally defeated at Waterloo in 1815. The legacy of French Revolution, that is, the ideas of liberty and democratic rights, spread from France to the rest of Europe during the 19th century. Tipu Sultan and Raja Ram Mohan Roy from India also responded to the ideas that came from revolutionary France. So with this, we have completed our first chapter.